quite a versatile
I found
bringer
him.
of new knowledge. And I think he was a surprise. Oh, there he is. Yeah, that's right. He is the old guy he used to call himself. So, James,
Hi.
welcome.
I'd never done this before, so I was curious when I would appear.
You're here. You are. You're appearing.
Yay.
No one knew you were the old guy.
I keep trying to change. I changed that name and it keeps bouncing back.
Oh.
So I'll
and I'm sure. So we will see you on the other side, my friend.
Okay. My name is Jim Farrelly. I was a very, very typical soccer dad, doing all the typical American things with your kids and going to activities in school. I'm an Army veteran. I used to be an artillery officer, a paratrooper, trained with Navy SEALs, fairly conservative person, fairly narrow mindset. And for a while, I was teaching high school sailing where I live. And in the summer of 2013, I was sailing in Tampa Bay off the coast of Florida with a very, very skilled group of sailors in a 420 class Olympic racing dinghy, which is like a little Maserati of a sailboat, and 2 of you in the boat at a given time. The second day of the training, the wind was very strong. The conditions were very challenging. And I eventually grew tired and made a mistake. And I dropped the tiller, which steers the little dinghy, and the boat spun out. I reached for it, sat back up, and I was hit in the back of the head by the boom, which is the piece of metal that holds the bottom of the sail down. And that was about the equivalent of being hit in the back of the head by a strong person wielding a baseball bat. And I went down. And unfortunately, I looked up to see the face of the man in the sailboat with me, and he was very frightened, which saddened me. And then I was gone. And I came back, if you want to use those terms, about 25 minutes later, and I saw my body on the dock. And I was about 20 feet to the left and 20 feet to the rear of my body. And I watched my body as it propped itself up on its left elbow. And it spoke to the woman who was coaching us. And we had not gotten along very well during this training session. And she was standing in the launch that brought me back to the dock. And I said to her, "I understand why you don't understand me," which really was profound because I did understand. And she became rather angry with me and then controlled herself and simply said, "You're crazy. And do you want to drive yourself to the hospital?" So not a bucket of empathy in that person. Now, the one thing I would like to be able to do, and I'm not sure how to do it on a webinar, is to share my screen. There it goes. So here is me. I hope you can also, let's see, got to hit share. That's me in the ER the day I died. And nobody's home in those eyes. And unfortunately, and it was a very rough day, very waxen skin. So now I have to come back to this screen. And so the next 2 years, more or less, were a blur. It was as if to gather myself, I had to go through a third party to find out anything about myself before my accident. And that was disconcerting and actually quite inconvenient because I didn't remember a lot of things. And also I was a Catholic at the time, and it was very difficult and very unsettling about having this period where you're not quite sure who you are, what you are, or a lot of other things. I also believe that there was a period of duality, perhaps as long as 2 years, where my old soul and my new soul overlapped. to bring things together. And it was just very, very difficult. So things progressed forward, and I was eventually diagnosed by a neurologist as having a traumatic brain injury. And I was doing my best to keep myself as upbeat as possible. And I was out doing what I like to do, and I was playing in the garage with the tools and looking at things. And a hummingbird flew into the garage, and it flew into the garage and it smacked the back wall, which I thought was kind of intriguing. And here is that hummingbird, and the hummingbird has some very dirty spider webs wrapped around its beak and its foot. And what I had to do was unwind all of that to free it. And when I did that, it sort of woke up and flew away. And that became important because a friend said, you should really research that. And it simply said that the cardinal direction for the hummingbird in a shamanic sense is the north. And the bird had smacked into the north wall of the garage. And it also represents the beginning of an epic journey to find your way back to the source and your soul. So that was quite profound. So most of the wisdom that's conveyed through channeling can be brought about, and that's the method that I prefer, through meeting someone who has that special kind of ability to spot those with the eyes that ask for the knowledge to be, excuse me for a second, critical to carrying out the mission that I've been asked to accomplish, which is to help the planet as a whole by helping individuals awaken to their purpose here. This journey that the hummingbird reminded me that I was beginning, to help remind themselves that they aren't just here, but they're here for a purpose. A group effort done at times solo, but slowly perhaps turning into a gathering of voices and energies, just like we have here today, these wonderful people. We all want to be here. We all want to listen and learn from each other. I think that's so wonderful. And these gatherings coalesce into an energetic shift, allowing us to change as a group of beings into something that will allow the planet to flourish, to allow all beings here to again know balance and harmony, which really is something that we have, so many of us have forgotten how to do. So we need to remember recognition and respect for all. And this is the way to raising our existence so that all who have chosen to incarnate at this time may know a higher vibration. A comment leading to a conversation, leading to a knowing that it's okay to go a bit more fully into what needs to be brought up. As I drop in, my guides come out more fully and I recede a bit to allow for this movement. I think that's why so many channels don't remember what they're channeling as you step aside. And when this occurs, this is where the magic happens. It's as if I'm watching rather than participating. Although I know I'm an integral part of this act, an act which not only helps the person I'm interacting with, but creates a change that moves across the planet, which is a huge part of why I'm here as a walk-in. Pulses are sent out and gathered by those who are ready, the other receivers in the web we are weaving. I sometimes wonder if that's why we have such an affinity, and I shouldn't say we, I should say I. I have an affinity for spiders, and I really do. Their webs are such simple structures, yet so strong, weathering wind, rain, ice, and impacts. And if any rips occur, the spider deftly does the work needed to put things right. And I'm very grateful to be able to do this work, although I certainly do it with a whole lot of help. Now, the next step on my journey, I really feel strongly to talk about, was being called to learn Reiki. Now, brain injuries and balance kind of go hand in hand, and I was not doing well at riding a bike. So my wife, who was very kind, thought it might be nice to learn how to surf together. So we bought a pair of boards and slowly got the hang of that. And unfortunately, I injured a knee, and a friend said, you need to go into town and see the Reiki lady. And she began to do work on me in her home. And the fascinating part was as she worked her way down to my right knee, which was injured, I could see what she was doing in a cartoon sense. I could see the knee joint. I could see an angry red energy that circled around the joint. And as she worked, the energy shifted to an emerald green, and then to a beautiful golden light, and then finally to a black ash, which drifted away to nothingness. And at the end of the session, she had me sit up, and I was feeling very refreshed and very excited. And I asked her if she wanted to know what I had seen during the session. And this chubby little grandmother's eyes shot up, and she said, "Yes, I would really like to know what occurred." So I revealed this sort of brief moment of cartoonish X-ray vision. And she kind of nodded and said, "Okay, you're ready to serve others. You're now my student." And okay, so I studied the book and came back to her a while later, and the book on Reiki. And she talked to me about it and satisfied that my heart was in the right place and that service to others was clearly in my path. She had me sit in a very comfortable chair and began to give me an attunement. And this was the first real full-blown meeting beyond the veil to me. And that's where I saw the angelic and felt all of these beings surrounded me and infusing me with the energy of Reiki. So this connection to healing and service to others as a walk-in has been the foundation for my new soul in this human body. Having an ability to see in my mind's eye what areas need a closer look as I perform Reiki is both valuable to me as it fine-tunes my attention. But what this seeing also does is it allows me to talk to the person I'm working with. Sometimes the aspects that stand out may be large swaths of their body or the tiniest string of energy lodged awkwardly that needs to be flicked away. I can remember an occurrence in which I saw someone, they had an absolute neon pink piece of yarn in my mind right there on their throat, and they had had a persistent cough for a few days, but they didn't have any other symptoms of a cold. So I asked them to reach up and flick it, and they did, and it went away, as did their cough. And I thought that was amazing that we together we could dial things in and get them in a much better place. So it's amazing work to be called into, and it's always both satisfying and wondrous. Making things better and leaving someone in a more peaceful place tends to lead that person to creating an energy field around them that others can sense and react to favorably as they go about their daily work. And this of increasing awakening is my core mission as a walk-in, and it really makes me happy. I'm so grateful to be able to sit with all of you. So a small bit of history that does fold into this well, I believe, is before my accident, as a former military person, I felt I needed a higher level of empathy. And so I used psilocybin to gain that, and had a friend hold space for me as I did this. And the very first time that I broke through the veil, as it were, was very unexpected. I was staring in my bathroom mirror, and all of a sudden the mirror turned into a portal. And I made a connection that I didn't know would be so important and so lifelong to my path. I began to see two Maya warriors wearing large green jade masks appear, and they began to advance toward me with this heavy tribal drum beat. And they were walking like this with their hands up, loincloth and jade mask, very trim and muscular. And this absolutely caught me off guard and kind of blew my mind. And I took a half step back and I said loudly to them, "You may teach me, but you may not frighten me." And the masked warriors quietly retreated into the mirror portal, and the experience ended. And it was fascinating and a bit overwhelming, but also gratifying. So later that night, I had a very interesting dream. And in my interesting dream, I had a grandmother come to me, as I call them, my guides. And the grandmother came forward And she began to yell at me, and she shook a box of fish bones at me and began to say, "You wake up. You hear me? You wake up." And I did wake up. So this picture that I'm showing it was so profound. The next day I did my best to render a painting of what I saw. And it was about that simple, but it was just very, very, very fascinating. So and these beings after my NDE really became part of my life, an absolutely daily aspect of my life as a walk-in. And they helped me understand that I was here to serve and help plant the seed of an awakening when interacting with those who choose to open up themselves to this opportunity. So after my accident with a traumatic brain injury, it did not seem wise to continue this mushroom use. So my brain really didn't like alcohol, and I loved beer, but I couldn't drink it anymore. So what was fascinating was I continued to meditate and I continued to interact with these grandmothers. And I had a very, very interesting interaction where I had a family member who was deathly ill, and they were on the verge of being placed in hospice. And I journeyed very deeply in a shamanic sense to the Maya jungle. And I saw this family member on a black table that I felt rather than saw look like a hospital bed. And as they lay their face up on the table, covered in a very gossamer-like white cloth, I noticed something curious. They had dots going along their body that looked like EKG stickies, except they were colored like the rainbow, Roy G. Biv. And they reminded me absolutely of these stickies, and I didn't understand what was going on. And later on, I related this to a friend, and the friend told me that they were chakra markers or chakra colors, and the placements were correct and the colors were correct. And I'd never heard of chakras. That's why this is important. And an experience like this isn't just an anecdote. It's extremely important to me, a person who needs to have a demonstration of what's going on in my new life. And it was grounding me in the realities of being a walk-in. And it's nothing short of shocking to your system and mind to find yourself with these abilities that almost everyone around you has chosen to forget in this incarnation. So being educated by my guides as to the truthfulness of this world was critical to my accepting a path as a walk-in, because I feel that I'm the kind of walk-in that's an unconscious walk-in. It occurred, but I didn't remember initially why I was here. Because at this point, we're about 3 years into my journey. So because I was experiencing these things and because the right people being brought to me, it allowed me to be more open to meetings with other people like me, our tribe, as some of us like to say. So I needed to feel accepted and normal. And because this is a very dense, difficult reality at times that all too often to me seems so devoid of empathy by others. So I needed to help find a balance between this world and my mission, the empathy and the lack of empathy. So again, back to the person on the table in the Maya jungle. I knew my grandmothers were all around me, and I asked to help have a healing for this family member who really was well on their way out. And I was told that their energy centers, they didn't use the word chakra, were frozen, and I could see that. And they needed to remain that way until that person chose to help themselves. And at this stage of my development, that truly broke my heart. the grandmothers were very stern about not helping, as they considered interfering with a person's path and it should not be attempted. And I absolutely implored them and stamped my little feet. And they very reluctantly agreed, but were not happy about it. Symbolically, they turned my body into a pump of animal skins, and they attached part of me to the family member and part of me they put into the creek. And they operated my body like a bellows. The two warriors in the jade masks, they pumped me, and it made a very loud, classic water pumping sound. And they pumped the energy of disease out and ejected the energy into Mother Earth. Now, this experience of doing this, of pumping out the unhealthy energy, was absolutely exhausting for me. It was, without a doubt, the most completely debilitating thing that I've ever done in my entire life. But it probably lasted a whopping 2 or 3 minutes. And I felt like I had just run several marathons in a row, both physically and psychologically. And that second aspect, psychologically, was kind of important, why it really drained me emotionally so much. Now, immediately after the pumping stopped, again, that grandmotherly stern voice came in, and she shook her finger at me very, very harshly. And she said, "We will not do that again." Now, they surrounded me, the grandmothers, in a beautiful cloth, swaddled me and held me and loved me. And it was absolutely one of the most beautiful moments in my entire life. The whole scene bathed in a violet light. And it just went, the calming and loving went on and on, just an infinite level of love. Now, anecdotes are wonderful, but this is important to me as a walk-in to convey. It was a demonstration of an ability to provide healing. And that was very new to me. Healing through the use of my body as a conduit to be utilized by Source to provide an energy needed to help others, to be in service. So I can't just be taught something I know myself. It has to be demonstrated that these healings could be done. And immediately after, the woman who would hold space for me when I would do these journeys, again, she came over to hold space, but this time the journey was about her. And she had very bad nerve damage in her body. And the grandmothers allowed me to enter each individual cell she had, nerve cell, and modify them until they function correctly again. Again, a reiteration, an affirmation that I was on my path was deeply needed by me at this point. Times like this made me feel relatively normal and grounded. And as I saw in the chat, as others were speaking ahead of me, it really can be difficult at the beginning to feel normal and grounded and accepted. So I was learning to smooth out the friction. I was learning to fill the lonely void, and I was learning to fit in. Now, ayahuasca seemed to be sort of becoming known either in my world or the Western world as a whole. I'm not sure. But after having good experiences with the mushroom, but having a traumatic brain injury, I wanted to experience Mother Ayahuasca, but I knew not to. And bruised brains and intensive psychedelics just didn't seem like the best mix possible. And it was so intriguing. And it was the part of the world that I was drawn to, absolutely drawn to, Central and South America. I knew that if I continued to meditate with Mother Ayahuasca, there had to be a compatible connection there, a way that was safe for me. And I meditated while researching ayahuasca experiences for about a year. And suddenly, during a deep meditation session, something really remarkable occurred. Mother Ayahuasca appeared to me in the form of a vine with the beautiful red nodding flowers. And ayahuasca is a vine and then a plant with these beautiful red flowers. And as a symbol, she had combined the two. She had the vine with nodding flowers on it. And she had me put my hands up, palms toward the vine, and the flowers surged forward and pierced each of my hands. And I both felt and saw her spirit enter me. My palms glowed red, and my veins pulsed green as she worked her spirit deeply into my flesh, and I became infused with her. And as her spirit moved within my body, I heard her say that it wasn't necessary for me to drink her medicine and that she would always be with me. And I absolutely ensure that every day I meditate to her and to Mother Jaguar to show gratefulness. These non-corporeal experiences continued to be a critical stepping stone as a walk-in that allowed me to travel ever higher on my path. Now, keep in mind, I wanted to help. However, my past was as a very different person with a very narrow mindset. That echo of that person was still holding me back. So Mother Ayahuasca, as a being of the earth, was a big part of the foundation supporting my new love and connection of the earth. I've been told that I am a planetarian. I am here to help the earth. And it must be emphasized that these stories aren't just anecdotal evidence I convey, but rather demonstrations of the interweaving of my soul with the different spirits needed to allow my usefulness as a healer of the planet and its people to blossom. Every time I meditate, I invoke Mother Ayahuasca's spirit and Mother Jaguar, as I mentioned. And my connections to the spirits of the Amazon are a bridge to the memories of who I was and who I am becoming. Now, there was something very important that occurred during this. I felt very broken and I felt very lost, and I felt like I didn't belong here yet. So during this period of spiritual downloads, journeying, and learning to meditate, I stumbled across the world of singing bowls, and I absolutely can't remember how. But I bought a bowl with an inscription, and it was a bowl almost identical to this one, almost called a footed bowl. It's very interesting. Now, I contacted a man in Britain named Frank Perry, who had written a book about singing bowls. And I wanted to know if he could interpret the inscription, which I'd painstakingly transcribed onto a piece of paper because you couldn't photograph it well. He said no, but there was a man named Dr. Mitchner who had spent 50 years doing singing bowls, who I contacted. And I asked about the inscription on the bowl. And he informed me that his assistant, who was fluent in the language on the bowl, was home in Tibet attending to a loved one. But usually the inscriptions were the names of where the bowl originated. Imagine if it had been made in Philadelphia, that's what it would say on the side. I don't think they make a lot of bowls in Philadelphia, though. We could check on that later. So Mitch invited me instead to attend a class which was starting in 3 days, which I felt very compelled to go to. Now, this became a very wonderful aspect of learning to heal as a walk-in. I would spend the next 8 years in a continual study of bowls and gongs under this man named Mitch, and built a wonderful friendship with him. And it was a beautiful immersion into many aspects of sound therapy with people from around the world. So I've worked with other traumatic brain injury sufferers. I've worked with veterans with PTSD and people with anxiety. And following the sound of a singing bowl as you tap it, and the sound travels into the distance, it creates a very gentle, safe place to be and to relax. And when we feel the space of love and connection, growth may begin. With this growth, I feel empathy moves more to the front of our lives, which in turn allows for our ability to be fully present when interacting with others. And this is a core aspect of creating the change needed in our present reality. It's interesting how often people seeking activation are enabled on this path when the right bowl is played for them. And as a walk-in, I can sort of look at the bowls and pick it and play it and carry it around their forehead. And this creates a calmness and a creation of, again, a safe place for reflection. And I do believe that that self-reflection adds to self-awareness. And self-awareness can allow you to create other forms of self-soothing. And from there, you can create connections. One of my favorite ways to create a connection, I spend a fair amount of time in the mountains of Appalachia, is I have flutes. This is one of them. And it's made from a sacred piece of cedar from a tree that I visit often. So what I think is amazing about the mountains of Appalachia and the importance of being there as a walk-in is the chain is where the skin of the earth splits open and her heart energy soars. And I'm sure that that's true of any mountainous area. Now, this energy facilitates a connection, which allows me to create a bridge both for myself and for those in need of a bridge walker, someone who walks between the worlds. I was very fascinated recently, by the way, that in Peru, that is what they call people who walk between the worlds. In Quechua, it's a term called bridge walker, which I don't think I could pronounce very well. So when I'm in Appalachia, I do my best to wander these magical places where the earth splits open and her heart pours out, and to do that with people who need to work things out within themselves. And I'm a person who likes to talk a lot. And this is an area where little talking occurs. It's interesting. We'll walk along, the two of us, and it's a place where you can feel that you're both holding space, intentionally or not, and witnessing. And being a witness is critical because that's an unspoken validation of the energies being offered and accepted by those in attendance. So an ability to recognize energy centers is also an ability as a walk-in that arises within me, especially while sitting in nature in the mountains. Most of the time, these energy centers are naturally occurring. Once in a while, I'm given the knowledge to help create one to maximize those energies. So it's a formal shaping of an outdoor space to concentrate and tap in directly to the heart of the earth and to allow the synergy of the 5 elements to spill out. I just love that thought, where you're just making this wonderful flow of everything that is needed. So a natural amphitheater forms to bring the local spirits together for ceremony and healing, a place for demonstrating gratitude to them, as they are frequently the messengers to bring me the information intuited both for myself and others in this space. So I would like to share a photo, and this is a very special photo. Let me enlarge this. Now that, my friends, is a very secret, very special place that I'm sharing with you. And that is a stone circle that I had created. Now these stones are about 9 feet long, and they stick up out of the ground about up to my chin. I'm average height, 5'10", 5'11". And the energies here are nothing short of amazing. And the people who come here, everything that they are allowed to experience is, again, nothing short of amazing. And as a walk-in, I am so firmly called to do this, to help others. Oops. So, and of course I did all that, and I have the next photo I want to share right next to it. Hold on one second. I am not overly adept at this, but I'm getting there. Go that way. Come back up. So the next photo that I wanted to share was this. So this is a photo that a friend took on her land, which I think is nothing short of miraculous. You can see the energy beings coming out of this up into the sun. Absolutely amazing. I've never seen anything like that. And she showed me photo after photo after photo of that on her camera roll. And I'm very, very grateful to be able to show that to you. Now, the stone circle, that particular space was created to maximize the energies that already existed in the form of water flowing 2 to 3 feet underground down the mountain, down to a creek just below that circle. And it creates a wonderful concentration of the energies. And also the creek allows for the energies to be taken away as well if you need. So it wasn't an accident that I was called to create at this location. It was simply meant to be a profound part of the process of my path to an enable of change within others, which is core to my mission as a walk-in starseed. It was here that a friend's true form coalesced, where she found her path as an angelic being, a remembering of who she is. It was through the energy of this site that I saw her and was called to both describe her awareness out loud and draw it on paper. Her true form is a tall, beautiful, red-haired angel with huge white wings who stood before me in that stone circle. I've never met a person who had such reverence for a place. She is amazing. She and I walk that land very often. So guiding people to places where both activations may be given by the beings who reside there, as well as spots where the unwanted aspects of ourselves can be washed away, are made available to those who choose to walk with me in these spaces. I've had a wonderful bit of serendipity on Clubhouse, the Clubhouse app that some of us know about. A rabbi from Australia taught me about the Jewish tradition of the mikveh. And a mikveh is a place of water that may be used for spiritual purification. Now, I bring that up because the creek that runs along the bottom of the land has a pool. And if one chooses to be present and follow me there and stand in the flowing waters of this creek and ask, emotional and spiritual burdens may be carried away. So this is truly Mother Earth's mikveh. And the rabbi really enjoyed that. So everyone I brought to this sacred spot, this pool of water, which has a wonderful natural stone bench right in the middle of it, feels better, lighter, more ready for their journey that exists in this reality. And this is my favorite story about that spot. I once guided a very great skeptic to this spot. Their reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Just a huge, endless smile from a normally very stoic face. Not a word was spoken afterwards by them of this experience, but my skeptical friend always makes it a point to ask to visit that spot in the creek every time they visit. And there's always a childlike spark blazing in their otherwise very adult eyes. So intuiting and channeling are my jump-off points to be in service to others. And sometimes these methods are done formally on a beach with ceremony. And sometimes they are done in the moment when a person's eyes telegraph to me that they are ready for a bit of a bump forward. And this info is always passed perfectly, as these acts are not my own. That is my favorite part of channeling, is the perfection of it all. I am the conveyance, the one who steps aside. However, I do need to be willing to be both self-aware and very conscious of my surroundings and the beings present with me. And this self-awareness is a key practice in my service to others, an essential foundation. So it was during one of my sound healing classes that an anecdote was related to by the teacher. Now, this is leading to something really important in my mission as a walk-in. He had a friend who was a hedge witch, suffering from stage 4 cancer, which she cured by drinking parsley juice. Now, this very greatly intrigued me and confused me. So how does one heal themselves by drinking veggie juice? So being curious, I did lots of Googling on the subject of plant medicine and finally just enrolled in a 1-year online herbalist class and began studying this aspect of human-plant interaction quite deeply. During the course, I realized how this hedge witch had become healed. The parsley juice was not her secret to success, not the physical parsley juice. It was the interaction and devotion to the spirit of the parsley that allowed for her disease to be taken from her. This came to light during the herbalist class that I was taking, in which you choose 6 local herbaceous plants and meditate with them one at a time over the course of 6 moon phases. And this meditative moon cycle session with each herb allowed me to meet one of my toughest teachers, yet closest plant spirit guides, the spirit of chickweed. And chickweed is a ubiquitous creeping plant that pops up in almost every moist, sunny crack and crevice imaginable. It has a slightly peppery flavor with the bonus of a pleasant crunch as you chew on it. So one day while settling in to meditate, I realized I had a small bump on the bottom of my right bicep. And I spend a lot of time in the sun here in the deep south, and that worried me. So as I meditated and dropped in, chickweed immediately came forward and told me that it would handle this potential skin problem and delivered on the promise. Now I want to show you a picture of chickweed. It's a very small, low plant. You're going to find it in most of our yards, I do believe. Those stalks are probably about 2.5 inches. So a connection with the plant spirit at this period of my development was a critical part of the life of a new walk-in, and it opened a door to healing that I did not know existed. The importance of the relationship with plants had begun. That did not fully dawn on me until very recently. As so often, we're often too close to things to really notice what needs our focus. So while being interviewed by Alan and Sheila on New Realities, Alan intuited that this was part of my path as a walk-in that needed to be highlighted. A greater development of my ability to convey the healing powers of plants was needed. So as teachers like Alan and Sheila cross our path, it's important to listen, and to listen with all of our senses to aid in grasping the skills necessary to maximize the benefit that we as walk-ins serve this planet and all of its inhabitants. Now, things began to broaden, and I began to meditate with a woman who I had met. And I went over to her home, met her husband, and we became friends, and we began to meditate together. And we began to have experiences that overlapped that we really could not understand. So what would occur is we would become somehow together bilocated, sitting in her home, but also sitting somewhere else. And the very first experience involved an evening with shamanic elders sitting around a campfire that I believe was in the American Southwest. So we sat in the darkness, and I met a shaman called the Blue Shaman, who's a timeless elder who wore a partial buffalo skull on his head that was painted blue. And I found myself holding a symbol of my old heart, and it was a wooden heart with brass buttons all the way around it and red tassels flowing down. And he and I, in that semi-darkness with a pantheon of elders in the background, carried that heart to the campfire, and we threw it in. And this was a symbol of me vanquishing my old earthly habits, because in many lifetimes, I was a warrior and I was very good at it. And when you're a good warrior, that means you're doing a lot of damage. So that was hard, but it was also good. So one day while interacting with this woman, she snapped into a channel, which really shocked me because I had never seen someone else channel. And her voice sort of changed and she sort of checked out. And she simply said one sentence: "You're to work with the Arcturians." I didn't know who she meant. I'd heard of the star, but I didn't know there were beings. And it would take 8 more years for me to find out what she was talking about. So our next meditative session, we really went into the realm of the surreal in my mind at the time. So we found ourselves traveling down a light tunnel, perhaps a wormhole, I'm not sure. And we ended up on a ship. And I'm going to show you a drawing of that ship. Where did it go? And the ship wrong one. Hold on. Be patient. Where are we? All right, I'm working my hardest.
It's okay. You're doing really well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to enlarge my screen, which somehow I can't seem to enlarge.
It's okay here.
I'm not sure. Are you seeing that?
I am seeing the schedule.
Yeah, I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm trying to unshare that.
Okay, go and yeah. Okay, now
Okay,
pull
thank
it
you.
up again and then try it.
There. Ready? There. So there's the ship. My son drew that. He does professional CGI, and very accurate depiction of the ship. And in the ship, there were 2 tall mantis beings, and they put me in a chair, and they showed me another being, and there is the next being. It looked very, very similar to that. And I was being shown by them as sort of an example of what humans look like. So there's an aspect of this that was important, because at the end of this interaction, I simply said, I would like a free energy device, the schematics to that, to give to the people of Earth. And they sort of chuckled a bit and said, you can't handle that information. And perhaps they're right. But instead, they had me do something interesting. They had me pick up a dry erase board that happened to be very near me and the marker, and I drew a circle. And at the top of the circle, they had me, it looked like a dot. It was a seed. And at the 3 o'clock position, the seed was growing with rain on it. The 6 o'clock position, the plant was bigger. And in 9 o'clock position, there was a stick figure, and someone was harvesting the plant. And they said, that is your free energy device. I told you I'm a planetarian and I'm here to help the planet. And there is an old Hopi expression that all you need is a loincloth and a corn planting stick. And when you really think about it, what is perfection? A seed is perfection. It is the free energy device. If you combine seed, soil, sun, and water, you have everything you need to live. And every seed really is a circle of source energy designed to provide. And I think that that's absolutely wonderful. We really need to remember that this was part of the Starseed walk-in Starseed hybrid training. We should not rely too much on our technologies. We should remember to stay grounded. we should remember to be stewards of Earth and to walk in. We have to remember that all things have consciousness. Now, unfortunately, this is presently not accepted by most as truth on this planet. All things need love. The Beatles really had it right. Love is all you need. But we must convey the truth of universal consciousness to others in a way that is for the best and highest good of all. That is a core aspect of my mission as a walk-in at this time. Now, as Sheila mentioned in my bio, I have a very great affinity for what I call the small beings. So the bees, the snakes, the lizards, herbaceous plants, and the trees. And older trees are just a wonderful source of knowledge and loving energy and grounding. So it is to be made note that as a walk-in, my service isn't just to humans, but to all the beings of Earth, to help create a balance between the humans and the beings of the planet, so that we can remember to stay in harmony. So an example of this, which I think is very interesting, is one spring morning, I was outside meditating in the garden, as I often did in the morning. And a friend of my wife's was visiting, a very practical farmer. And she had mentioned the day before that she was terrified of snakes and always went out of her way to kill them with a shotgun on her farm because she felt she was protecting her horses. As I got up from meditating, there was a snake on the grassy path back to the house. And I thought about what my wife's friend had said concerning snakes, and I had a thought. I looked at the snake, and in my mind, I say, may I carry you over to the house for a moment to help a friend understand you better, and then return you to your little spot so you can keep sunning. And the snake agreed, so I carefully picked the snake up and carried him to the screen door and asked for her to come over. Now, slowly I raised the snake up for her to see, keeping the screen door between us because I didn't want to concern her. After looking at it, she kind of clutched at her shirt a bit. And I said, do you see the beauty in this creature? And her face softened, and you could feel an energy shift, a very important and permanent energy shift. Her eyes changed from fear to wonder as she commented on the beautiful colors dappling the scales on the sides of the snake's face. And all the while, the snake just lay in my hand very, very passively. She visibly relaxed, and I could tell an understanding had been bridged. I thanked the snake, and I thanked her for understanding, and I walked the snake back as promised and placed it down gently. And I thanked Mother Earth for all of this. And then I went inside. And it's something that we all have to remember. Nudges are something that we all need to change. As a walk-in, we must remember to rub elbows with those in our path who appear ready, and allow our vibrations to be felt and absorbed by those close to us, and eventually through the connections that we have made over time, by initially just a few and spreading to millions across the planet, we will change the vibration. It's never a coincidence when we meet the right people as walk-ins. We're here to be connectors, helpers, and teachers. Now, I would like to offer something what I think is very important, which is an activation by my wonderful teacher and spirit friend, Chickweed. So I asked Chickweed, as I meditated every day this week with that wonderful plant, for a message for all of you. And so I ask you to just settle in quietly and listen carefully to the words of the Spirit as was brought to me as I sat. Chickweed would like this message to convey to you all. So open your hearts. Grounding, remembering our love for the earth, activating the parts of our memories to allow us to remember our love for all beings. This will be the gateway for you to begin to remember who you truly are and why you are here at this time. You must eclipse the concept of you and the other and become one with all. And I'd like to close with this. Jane Goodall wrote a beautiful poem called Only They can whisper songs of hope. And this is a very abridged version because it's a very long poem. So, the world has need of them who stand upon the bridge, who know the pain and the singing of a bird, and the beauty beyond a flower dying, who have heard the crystal harmony within the silence of a snow-peaked mountain. For who but they can bring life's meaning to the living dead? Oh, the world needs those standing on the bridge, for they know how eternity reaches to earth and the wind. Only they can blow the dust from the seeing of the eyes of those who are blind. Yet pity them, those who stand upon the bridge, for they, having known utter peace, are moved by an ancient compassion to reach back to those who cry out from a world which has lost its meaning. And so they stand there on the bridge, torn by the anguish of free will, yearning with unshed tears to go back, to return to the starlight of their beginnings, to the utter peace of the unfleshed spirit. Yet only they can whisper songs of hope to those who struggle helpless toward the light. Oh, let them not desert us, those on the bridge, those who have known love. In this poem, Dr. Goodall describes seeing the entire universe in the eye of a frog. Countless times over the course of my life, I've experienced that micro world and looked at the tiny vistas created in the gaps of a pine cone, or listened to the scratch, scratch, scratch of a wasp as it gathers wood shavings from a fence post to build its nest. An aspect of my path as a walker is to help others see life in the micro rather than the macro, to crouch down, to gaze at the tiny beings so often pass by, to remind to pause and be, to really see. For as Dr. Goodall says in the poem, the entire universe can be observed fully in the eye of a frog. I look forward to interacting with all of you and doing my best to answer your questions. Thank you.
Wow. Beautiful, James. I love the peace that you speak with. It's kind of dropped in from someone who's been able to integrate their process. And
it's been very cathartic for me, and I promise you, I'm receiving more than I'm giving here, and I'm just trying to keep up. I'm so glad that I've been able to meet all of you.
when you say you're receiving, what are you receiving?
Catharsis, a deep level of catharsis and acceptance. I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's that simple. But when you are in a society that doesn't want you to do that, that just wants you to succeed and conquer and make money, it is very hard to slow down and to be and to notice. And as I spoke of earlier, there's a balance there of this world and where many of us are. And you can't just love and light it all. You have to exist in this world, this density, as some say. And so I'm learning for there to be a balance. You had a speaker on, I can't think of his name, on one of your interviews, which I really binged watch a lot of your good stuff. And he simply said, using very colorful language, the world is a you-know-what kind of a place. He had an accent. I'm not sure where he was from. He was bald. And you had to really listen to him. So in other words, don't get wrapped up in the disasters. Think of the happiness, raise your vibration. And when we all do that, that is how we will change things. And my wife has been telling me that for the last 8 years. And it took someone else for me to listen.
Well, you know, you're talking about trying to fit into society. And I think that's why we gather here, because we're building a new society. We're building communities that appreciate this as value, not how much money you can make, not, you know, how to cheat the other guy out of business because you know, the core of competition, but to cooperate and have everyone bring their piece. So thank you for your journey into, I mean, I guess it was nothing you were planning, but it just, here you are.
As you said during my interview that you had with me was, boy, you're out of the closet now. And I thought that was such a beautiful statement. I mean, I'm watching Sheila smile, and it's always so wonderful. And you just feel like you're part of that, exactly what you're supposed to be part of. And and that's what matters.
Well, one more
So
thing you
thank you.
said just now before is that you're here to point out the detail, the little things. Like a lot of people are here to point out the big picture. We're connected to the cosmos, and that ancient starlight that you mentioned is within us. And but the details of the earth world is just as infinite. It's just as magical.
Yeah, there's a wiring there that I don't understand. I'm constantly finding cell phones and wallets on the roads that people don't notice, and I return them. But I'm also the kind of person, and this is something that actually happened. I'll be driving down I-95 at highway speed, and I will notice a praying mantis on the white line. And everything slows down and then returns to normal. And I've always been wired that way. I've always been, flipping rocks and looking at the little life under things and whatnot, and always loved to garden. But I just needed this rather profound nudge to remember who I was. And, listening to Sheila, I'd never heard your story, Sheila, and I was so excited to listen and see your photos. And I like the montage, and I also like the parallels of was that person. They seem like a nice person. Who were they? because I don't know. It's a nice place to be, and I deeply feel that it was important to show that circle of stone that I created, because that is a place where the energies really coalesce. And I like how they brought to me the concept of where the mountains split open the earth, that Mother Earth pours forward. And you have these elements just connecting and coming together. And all of that came just pouring out of me in the last few days. And because I asked them to, in a sense, not to write it for me, but almost. And that's pretty much what they did. I don't feel any of those words were mine. And I think that's a very beautiful thing.
I wanted to ask you, the reason that I popped on, would it be possible for you to put that photograph of the stone circle back up and let us have just a minute to kind of drop ourselves into that and absorb that energy?
Here we go.
Journey into the stone circle. If you want to lead us a little bit through that circle, James.
Let's see. Is this it? Let me see. No, that's not. Hold on. That's it. Okay.
Oh.
Do. You have to close your eyes.
Okay. Almost there.
And that's, by the way, that's the mikveh. That's the natural mikveh. So here we go.
Okay, there we go.
You can really feel that energy radiating out of it if you connect in. And
you created this, huh? You created the little structures.
When we built our little cabin, the contractor, he and I really connected, and talk about serendipity. We had the same last name, and we were from the same part of Ireland. And I think that was interesting. So he said, "Where do you want the rocks?" And I go, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "We're going to dig up more rocks than you can imagine. Where do you want them?" I said, "Do you want the dream shot? I want Stonehenge." And he laughed. He goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "I want that spot at the bottom of the hill by the creek to be a stone circle like you see in Ireland. And he was from Ireland. He was born there. He was a farmer. And so I live at the beach, and I took a stick and a string, and I made a 38-foot circle on the beach to see how it looked, because that was the area that I was allowed to work with. And then on the inside, you'll see the smaller stones that look to be about the size of a headstone.
Mhm.
Now, those are a Fibonacci sequence from
Mm.
the outer circle. So I think it's a ratio of, someone can correct me, but like 1.68 compared to the big rocks. And in the center is a flat rock that I put those little stones around because it's very windy there. And I will make offerings in the middle of that. And then just so that when I work down there at night, I created that sort of stegosaurus path up to the stone circle where the little vertical rocks look like the back of a stegosaurus. And I'll go down there at night often because they call me down there. And it's kind of hilarious because I'm in my robe and I'm comfortable, and it's pitch dark, and they'll say, "Come visit us." And so I grab my flute, and I go down there in a robe and pajamas and boots and a little yoga mat and my flute, and I hang out for an hour or two, and under the stars. And another bit of serendipity, which I love, is when you lie on your back just next to the center and look up, you're in an inner stone circle surrounded by an outer stone circle, surrounded by a circle of trees. And then above you are the stars. And at this time of the year, what's right above you? The Pleiades, at least in this hemisphere, the northern hemisphere. And I think that that's really neat. And I really outed myself with this picture because the only person who knew about the stone circle were my closest friends and Bridget. I told Bridget about it.
And this
very
is
hidden.
this is in Georgia at somewhere.
This is in the Appalachian Mountains.
Oh, in the Appalachian Mountains. Okay.
Yeah. So it's the left side of the photo is downhill. The right side is uphill. The reason that place is flat is that's where they placed the fill from the house when they dug things up. But I had a friend who's really connected, meaning scientifically and spiritually, to the land. And he studied my land, and he said, "You have water that flows down the entire side of this mountain, about 3 feet underground. And then there's bedrock. And so under that stone circle is a continuous flow curtain of water down to the creek. There's something else very important about this piece of land. So about 200 feet to the left of this picture are 3 very significant waterfalls that come together from 3 different directions. And those, it's a very powerful place. And I'm sure that any of the people in attendance right now would just be amazed at all of the beings there. And I feel
Well,
very grateful.
I was just going to
I
say our next
captured a couple
speaker.
of beans.
Well, I was just going to say,
sorry.
Sheila, our
I was
next
just
speaker
going-
is the Stone Hobbit, and maybe the Stone
Yes.
Hobbit has something to say about this. If you want to bring it. What were you going to say, Sheila? Sorry.
I was just going to say there's a couple of little spirits in there that I've taken a photo. I'll send them to you, Jim.
Oh.
You already know, but
Do you want to?
Yeah, I once took a digital photo of a bear of the circle, but there ended up being this green mist, and inside the green mist was a bear.
Wow.
And it was a female bear, and she's one of the many guardians on that land. They're very stern with me concerning that. I am the temporary steward of that land, and it is not to be sullied. It's joyous, it's fun, it's beautiful, but don't show up with a big band and hold a Woodstock. They wouldn't care for that. So much love, but also much respect, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, it is a sacred place. Did you want to ask the next speaker if they had a comment on what James was saying, Sheila?
Sure. Let's see, Neil, can you go ahead and bring Stone Stone Hobbit will be our next speaker.
Let's,
You say the name one more time?
Stone Hobbit.
Got it.
Yes.
James, while you're still here, what do you feel as you kind of drop into the walk-in community and know that you have friends in these realms?
All I can do is smile. I am so grateful. That is why I went to New Realities and just really binged, because it was necessary, and it was connection and
5 o'clock.
Oops.
and
Wow.
normalcy. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
because I hadn't met one before.
And here
You
you
know.
are. Well, Stone, what do you think of James's Stone Circle?
I love it. I totally love it. I see energies all around it in different forms. You have a light energy, a small being about this big at the very end, and it's like, oh, I love it. I totally do. It's got there's a lot of different area, and I can see that if you step into that, depending on which stone you're standing near, you're going to get a different tuning, a retuning of frequency. It's going to come in. It's giving me goosebumps all over. I totally love coming in at this time when you're talking about the stones. I am stone energy. You're describing the water flowing underneath the land. I'm in a position where I'm living on some ranges, top of New Zealand, and underneath me is crystal. We live in a place called Waitomo, which means cave, underwater cave, flow. And I'm got spring water. I live at the top. There's nothing else around me. I have spring water. It's crystal information coming straight to me. So I appreciate you being the speaker before me. I totally love it. I totally love it. I love what you're creating there, honey.
So this is what I was called to create for the land. And there's the
Yep.
mother bear. And then there was a wolf who appeared to me in a photograph. And then the owl is just sort of an old friend. It's not quite done, but it's very powerful. So I'm grateful. I don't want to dive too much into your speaking time. Thank you.
No, we're just integrating this, but
Yeah.
Okay.
but anything you want to say before you pass the talking stick on, James?
I love how the serendipity continues, and we have Stone here after speaking of the stones. So maybe we could play Sympathy for the Devil or something. Thank you so much.
Well, you'll join us for the panel tonight, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
Great.
Thank you
Great.
so much. You guys
Thanks
have a
for
great
your
day. Bye-bye.
share. Bye. Okay.